Okay. Hi. Thank you, Lisa, for joining our meaningful conversation. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's such a pleasure to be here, Marwan. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Um, Lisa, to start our conversation, would like to give us a little bit of introduction of who you are and what you do, and where you spend most of your time.
Oh gosh. Well, these days, because we're in the middle of the COVID crisis, I spend most of my time at home, and as we need to be. But let me give it a little bit of background, and I'll share a bit more. So my name is Lisa Stefanik. I am many things. I am a professor at University of Chicago Booth School of Business. I am a consultant in leadership and team effectiveness through two companies, KSA Leadership and Assessing in Action. I am a mother of a very cute and vivacious 4.5-year-old, and a new dog owner of a 4.5-month-old puppy. And so there's many hats I wear, and I would say that's just scratching the surface. I'm also just a strong believer in human connection. And so I imagine that's also what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
And just how do I spend my day? I'm at home. And just a word about that is that I realized, I was reflecting the other day that I have not traveled outside of, I'll give it, and I'm being generous here, 30 miles. I have not traveled outside of 30 miles for the last 6 months of my time here in the COVID crisis. And I used to travel every week, twice a week, globally, across the world, definitely to Chicago, because I live in California. And it has just been a very huge wake-up call for me around what I was doing to my body, certainly, and flinging myself into various places and different time zones. And I'm learning something in this process that there's an importance for space, pause. And I know I teach this, but I just wasn't doing it for myself. So this has been a lovely wake-up call for me in the midst of some devastation all around us with the crisis.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, speaking of the pause, now, what have you learned throughout those few months that we are all in a lockdown and in a social distance?
Yeah, I teach this in many arenas that I'm a part of, is the necessity for pause. I think the biggest thing I've learned is that pause creates a chance for a regroup, a reset, and reflection, even so small, that allows for real choice to emerge, and choice matched with intention and purpose. And it's easy to really I was getting into the mode of just, from this airport to this airport. There were moments when I was waking up in hotel rooms and like, shoot, I don't know which city I'm in right now. And looking out and being like, oh yeah, it's a city, I just don't know which one. And so, to create this kind of pause, to be in my familiar surroundings, to know that I am, that I am my best. I am my best instrument, because my work is here. You're looking at the work. When I am I don't create things with my hands. I create things with my voice and with my heart. I create with my full being present. And pause allows me to return to my center. Pause allows me to attune to what's most important. Listen. I think that's it. Pause creates the opportunity for me to actually listen to another person, And what I'm finding in these last few months, listen to myself and to what my body's trying to tell me.
Yeah. And you spoke and you teach a human connection. So what is your point of view around human connection?
We all need it. So we all need it. That human connection is our birthright. It is the way in which we find answers, the best answers together. And when, you know, I talk about team dynamics. So team dynamics is one of the expertise I own and have been cultivating for years. And dialogue, having a real conversation that involves not just the doing, but the connecting, connecting to self, because human connection does start with self. You've got to really be able to check in with what's needing to be said, right? And then comes and so what is the other person needing to say? And can I listen? And then comes what's exciting and what I love to work with students and and executives around the world is the opportunity to connect in philosophy or in vision or in any kind of idea place that allows, when we connect together, the best decisions, the best ideas are able to emerge. By ourselves, we might be good at coming up with ideas, but without the human connection, without understanding the other and the impact on others in a decision we're about to make, I mean, that's where I think we turn sideways as a culture or as a society.
Yeah, so I believe like human connection, it might be easier if it comes out of a choice. Like if I choose yes to connect with somebody, this will be easier sometimes. But the question is now, in a context of organization, how can we make that human connection be authentic or true? Because I believe in organization, there is so many constraints, there is culture, there is a way of that we have to behave, and all sorts of, let's say, challenges.
You know, I actually don't think that the way we have to, or the culture, I don't think that it can be a bad constraint. I think the way we are interacting, society has found in multiple areas of the world, there are ways that we organize. So if you just look at cultures in general, so the culture you have in Saudi Arabia, the culture I have here in California, you know, a culture in Malaysia, you know, to me there is, and it has its boundaries around kind of, you know, what you can do and what you shouldn't do, you know, what is appropriate to say and what, you know, you might get some reaction if you do say. To be clear, this is turning upside down on its head in the United States, but, you know, that's the signs of the times right now. There is an unraveling of culture right now. And the constraint of culture within an organization, within a society, within a country, the constraint, it provides a sense of, I know what I can do, I know what I can't do, and then comes choice. Do I push the box? Do I push outside the box? Do I take a risk and talk about this constraint because I can see that something within this constraint needs to change? And that's leadership, is taking risk to talk about what is not working in a culture, in a constraint, in an organization, within a team, between two people, to be able to speak up and take a risk and say, you know, I actually think this isn't working, and here's why. And as long as there's the connection, then we can talk about it, understand the other sides, and maybe there's a choice to stay within the constraints, or maybe there's a choice for change to happen. And so right now in the United States, there's a lot of unraveling, a lot of people speaking up about what's not working. And there's, you know, Yeah, what did you say?
What creates that? Why people now arriving and yes, speaking up on something that doesn't work?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of lack of coherence right now.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the constraint of different cultures, constraints create a sense of coherence. We all agree, we're all agreeing to the contract of that culture in a way, right?
Yeah.
And yes, there might be dissonance, voices that look out of the box of that culture and say, I think something needs to change in this culture. By and large, this is working, but there's something that needs to change. What's happened here is that you've got disinformation and a distrust that's been sown and cultivated around what is true and what is not true, and that creates that destroys coherence, because now I don't know where to turn to really get the right truth. And when I say the right truth, isn't that interesting? There's the truth, the right truth, the wrong truth. Suddenly now truth has become unpacked in a way that actually, if you think about the principle of what is true versus not true, there really is only one true. And I'm talking about the principle of truth. I'm not talking about ideology or, where religion might define things or, and to be clear, our truth, there's a personal truth. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the principle of truth. And right now, the principle of what truly happened, we're having a recording here. People can play back this recording, can read the transcript. I said the following. That is true, right? And the problem is that that's getting distorted, broken apart, and as we break down a first principle of what is and what is not, that's where the incoherence gets born. And if we here's the key, if I put my attention on the incoherence, if I put my attention of what is not working, more and more starts to flower out, because my attention makes that stronger. My attention creates more of the same. If I put my attention on truth, the principle of truth, and in fact, in a meditation practice, I will sit with what are principles, the principle of truth, and just sit with the concept of that, and even think in terms of United States. I then say, okay, in this meditation practice, what was this nation founded on? What are the values? And I put my attention back to that. That, I think, is where coherence can start to unfold again. But again, it takes our attention to have to create that. And right now, our attention is everywhere. It's dissipated and it's focused mostly on the negative. And that's, of course, creating more negative.
Yeah. So now we are like in the middle of the pandemic, crisis, challenges, incoherence. So what is your point of view now of the world that we are in at this moment in time?
I have 2 points of view. And again, where I put my attention, that's what grows stronger. So one point of view is that we're destroying ourselves. That there is an aspect of, how to put it? There's a lower self and there's a higher self. And right now I see a lot of attention on lower self, base, human reaction. When I say reaction, I refer to, there's a opportunistic side, there's a distrust. These are reactionary. And when walking down the street, I remember when I was living in Boston, I hate to do injustice to the city because it's an amazing city, but I'm about to tell a story that was very common when I was living in Boston, is that I would pass people and I'd smile because I'm Californian, and that's one of the parts of our culture, for better or for worse. And I would literally get scowls it takes a lot of muscle to frown. And so, but I would get reactions, and and then I'd feel, in reaction to that. So there's reaction to reaction, and it pulls us down. Yeah. So the destruction of self, the destruction of human connection, the destruction of community, the destruction of all the fabric that it takes to allow for us to coexist peacefully, but also co-create with innovation. All that is getting pulled apart. So that's one point of view. Let me tell you about the other point of view where I'm putting most of my focus.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid of that point of view. And by the way, that one I just described, by the way, I've learned to question my fear. Whenever I feel fear, that's when I put pause in. What is this fear trying to tell me? It's usually protective, by the way. Fear is usually a very wonderful protective friend. And that's where I look at it and I say, thanks, friend. What is it you're trying to say? And then everything else it's trying to say, all the crescendo, all the exaggeration, all the what ifs, I say, and no, thank you, too, right? Yeah. So that one point of view brings up a lot of fear for me. Yes. And sadness, particularly with a 4.5-year-old son that I want to raise to have a world of beautiful connection in front of him. So the other focus, this is where I want to go. The other focus is I think of a caterpillar in a chrysalis, and where there is a complete breakdown of cellular function and existence of what the cells themselves look like. And then there's a rebuilding, all within the container of that chrysalis. And my point of view that I want to put a lot of attention to about my view of the world today is that there is an opportunity, if you, if me, if anyone listening to this talk right now puts the attention to what could be possible, our attention and intention, so attention and intention on that is what creates that container that allows it to happen. And so that's my point of view, is that we're forming right now. We're breaking down and forming inside a beautiful container.
Yeah, and what does it take?
Sorry, go ahead.
What does it take to create that container?
Conversation, like right now, listening, a lot of listening, a lot of engaging the dissonance, not engaging it to exaggerate it, but engaging it to understand what it's trying to say so that we can learn and help build something that's going to fortify against that which somebody's afraid of, or that which somebody doesn't like, or whatever it is. I think also what's going to create that container is real genuine intention, focus, a real connection back to source. And again, how we started this conversation, my body is a huge instrument for telling me what is true for me. And again, this is different from the capital T truth, but what is true for Lisa, and what is not true for me. So if I can listen to myself, listen to another person, and with intention and focus say, you know what, there is real possibility. What's possible if we put our attention on that? We have finite attention. What could be possible if we put our attention on creating a more just world, and one that is more capable within an organizational mindset, for example, of really feeding the people that work in that organization or in that team.
Yeah, this is profound. So now this is open a question for me. It's about who you are as Lisa today. What are stories or event or someone who made a shift in you to become who you are today?
I'll tell you the first one, the one that really woke me up. I was in high school. I was a very depressed high schooler. Depressed because I think I just, I filled journal after journal after journal. I probably have 13 journals in the period of age 12 to 18. Just wrote a lot. And most of it was just, what I was seeing in the world and how it was, I was focused on the fear. I was focused on sadness. And there was a moment where in my junior year of high school, so I was about 17 years old, I had a teacher. His name was Mr. Hanlon, Robert Hanlon. And Robert Hanlon was an extraordinary individual, the messiest person outside of myself that I had ever met. I mean, he had the largest classroom in Lincoln High School. And yet that largest classroom was piled books, papers on every desk, except for where he had the students sit. And part of me thinks that he set that up on purpose in order for the students to have to sit in the front and in the middle. So Robert Hanlon, he was, he taught English literature, and he opened my eyes to so many things. First of all, he had the class watch Educating Rita. I don't know if anyone you've heard of this movie, but it is profound. He had us watch Harold and Maude. These are classic films that have really deep messages about the human condition and connection, or lack thereof, and what it takes to develop a person. So I spent all of my time, as much as my time as I could, in Mr. Hanlon's classroom. So I would volunteer for him to help him clean his classroom. I would just have conversations with him after school. And one moment after school, I was griping to him over, this one classmate who I thought was not nice. And, she had made a comment to me and it was still sticking with me and it hurt. And he turned to me and he said, well, what if what you're seeing in her is actually also in you? And that's what you're actually mostly reacting to. And I'm like, shoot, that means any of my reactions could actually turn back to myself. And that started a whole new set of journals around what if what Hitler did is also in me? What if Mother Teresa and all that she is and represented, Gandhi, Martin Luther King. So I went to the negatives and I went to the positives, and I was like, so that all could be in me. And suddenly I realized, so there's this opportunity for me to be any one of these things, and I've got choice. And I've got choice of how I react to somebody. And so that started for me the process of really understanding that that what is in you could also be in me, and therefore I can connect with any freaking person on this planet. And so that started the process for me, and my philosophy on life in just human connection is, if I meet any person, I will find something that I can connect with in them, something, because I know that whatever's in them is also in me, and vice versa, and I will help them see me. So that's where this started.
Wow. This is deep, and lucky you that you had this message earlier at your age.
Yeah, very lucky. He was one of my mentors. He's passed away, but he was definitely a mentor.
That is beautiful. So now, what is your point of view then for the future?
Well, again, it's where I put my focus. So my point of view for the future is where we truly, it feels like we are at a crossroad, and either we put our focus in the direction of what's not working too much, and therefore in that process we are going to continue on the decline, or we put our focus in what's not working, and therefore we need to do X, right? So if we can say, okay, get that this isn't working, now let's get creative together. And, you know, what does it say? Necessity is the, what is it? Something is the invention of necessity is the invention of new ideas, right? I'm completely forgetting what that phrase was. But there is an opportunity for us now. My view of the future is that we could, if we create this container of focus and intention, we absolutely could get super innovative. And already, so think about this, already with the COVID shelter in places that are necessary. And excuse me, here's the puppy. Hi, Cody. Yeah, I'm in charge of him today. But if we could, you know, look at across what it is that we with COVID, how the fact that we are now grounded and having to stay within our community. I've been volunteering in my local community and feeding folks and just trying to support the mental health of all this process. It's like, it's where my attention goes. And if at this moment, you know, there's all this technology, you know, Zoom and you know, I know the tech companies are just exploding with ideas and helping to bridge this gap that normally was a in-person connection. I would have loved to have done this interview with you in person. And here we are able to connect across, you know, time and space. And it's just, it's so easy. And so our technology, I think, is going to expand and further support an infrastructure of connection that doesn't have to be in person. Therefore, we won't overly exhaust our earth with plane travel and all that it takes to really get a message across to somebody else, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, technology now it's going to be a service for a human to have more connection. So now we are approaching to the end of the conversation, and I want to with last question. So if you meet someone, a stranger person on the street, and you want to give him advice, give him or give her an advice, what that would be?
At this moment in time, so of course that advice is going to change tomorrow or in 4 months time, but today, the thing that I would say is, what are you doing to take care of yourself? What are you doing to take care of your heart? And how can I help? There is less advice giving I want to give and more questions I want to ask and more listening I want to do. I suppose if there is a pithy advice that I could offer, you know, it boils down to take care of yourself, your instrument of who you are, because the more grounded, the more connected to yourself, your body, and what it is that, you know, helps make you stay on this planet the longest, that is what then allows you to be of service to the people in your life, to the community you're a part of, and to this whole planet. So yeah, I would advise, please take care of yourself. And how can I help?
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for joining, and thank you for sharing this wisdom and sharing your story.
Yeah, you bet. I didn't expect it to go in all these different directions, and that's the power of our connection and our interaction. And thank you for your in-depth questions. This is the start of a conversation. Let's just keep it going. And certainly anyone watching, I welcome a conversation.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks.